Well, hello, welcome. If anybody's we just went live here, so this is life. This is Fisher's Historical Society's Fisher's History Chat. We do this the first Tuesday of every month, and today we have Sue Payne on to kind of give us some early history of Hamilton. I don't know if John's there or not, but we can have
Yes,
him in on this as well. So they are early Fisher or Hamilton Southeastern uh, graduates, and additionally, both have worked at the Conner Prairie for quite some time. Is that correct?
That's right.
All
Long
right. Well, I want to let you guys introduce yourself real quick. Kind of tell the world who you are. Johnny, you might want to scoot up here a little bit. So there you
there we go.
yep.
A little more.
go.
I got my leg caught.
He got his leg caught.
I have prosthetic legs.
Okay. There.
Yeah, there you go.
Now I'm out of focus. Okay.
So you go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Sue Payne. I was born in Riverview. Apparently rather soon after they moved over to the new location from being on the square, my mother tells me. Grew up in the country. Around here, went to Fisher's Elementary and on to Southeastern and then on to Ball State. And I taught in Sheridan. My mom and I had a business for a while, and then I've been at Conner Prairie as a youth volunteer and as an employee for many, many years. And I really enjoy what I do.
Well, excellent.
And,
What did you do as far as teaching? What did
well,
you
my mom and I had a store over in Zionsville in the mid 1970s through the early 80s, the time of colonial furniture and things like that. And we had men who built furniture for us, and my mom was an artist, I was a designer and a finisher, and it was fun. It was really fun to be over there.
He asked you about your teaching.
And my teaching was in Sheridan, right out of Ball State, 5th and 6th grade.
Okay.
And it's kind of eerie because the kids who were 10 and 11 and 12 and I had them, they're approaching their golden years. I had fun. I went into John Deere a couple weeks ago, and one of my favorite kids was there. And what I remember about him was that he loved tacos. And so this young man there from John Deere I was talking to, I said, hey, Eddie likes tacos. And anyway, we started teasing him, and he took it okay, but it was a very good life experience to teach.
Now, do you guys live in Fishers now, or?
At 141st and Allisonville Road. Just
Okay. Well, very good.
Yeah.
Yep, we were. Now that's part of the story. My mom and dad moved out here in 49, bought a hunting lodge back on White River, way back in the back of our neighborhood. And it was pretty primitive, and it was rural Route 5. So it would come to, Carl Schaefer, rural Route 5. And yeah, in Hamilton County, Noblesville, but that was the address. And then I don't remember exactly when that changed. I was a kid, but then we were Noblesville just as a mailing address. And then about 25 years ago, it changed to Fishers. But actually our neighborhood is unannexed, which we like just fine. So we're not really a part of either. But, when you think about Fishers, when it was really just Hamilton County as a whole was not the metropolitan north of Indianapolis. It was country, it was cornfields, it was gravel roads. And it was kind of, again, a no man's land out here, kind of a wild place to be, and fun to grow up in. very fun. I found a scrapbook too. My mom she took the Daily Ledger as soon as they moved out here, and man, she kept articles about everything. And it was before I was really even involved in school or doing anything like that. So I've got some kind of neat stuff. You know, I tell people, that there was a covered bridge over White River at 116th, the old Eller Bridge, and no, there never was. And I go, yeah, there was.
Yeah.
And when I was very little, we went over to Carmel, and I was in the back seat, and all I remember is screaming because we went through the bridge and the noise
Of all the boards.
and then the light coming in, in fast shafts. That was not something I enjoyed, but it was memorable. And I can tell people, yeah, there was a bridge. And here I've got a picture I can hold up. Let's see, how do we do this? Where am I?
This is from oh, there you go.
Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Was
that one on 116th Street?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there was the Eller Road Bridge that was there
right.
at one time.
Since 1869, Eller's Bridge has been the scene of pleasant memories for residents in central Indiana, a favorite landmark, trotting horses and sulky, plow horse and wagon. And it's now the historic bridge is lying on the bottom of White River.
Yeah.
And that was like 1958, I think. And that's sad. That's a shame.
There's no big controversy over that they thought it was a war between Carmel and Fishers, and somebody arsoned it down. One of our board members, well, Robert Bowling, I think he has done a study on it, and there was a confession made by someone that was involved in it, but it was a totally accident. They were doing something, the fire got out of control. They were kids, so
yeah.
But they still won't say who they are, so anyway.
Yeah, forever anonymous, huh?
Yeah. So.
Well, and the house that Mom and Dad bought was actually a hunting lodge, and White Oaks, my mom named. It's officially the
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know White Oaks has been there forever.
Yeah. So. My mom came up with it because officially on property tax, it's the William Holton Dye subdivision. He was an attorney. He bought the property of White Oaks and platted it in the 1920s. I've got our original abstract, and our abstract goes clear back to William Connor. We're sitting on William Connor's land that he squatted on at one point. Very wooded. And thinking about this, what I remember as a little kid, which is hard for you to imagine, the bullfrogs at night were deafening.
Right.
It was deafening. And being young and hearing that it was so loud, it caught my attention, kind of creepy. And I remember when I was probably in high school, junior high, I woke up one morning and the song of the songbirds was incredibly loud, incredibly beautiful. You could walk out in the backyard and see the Milky Way.
Yes, I saw that when I was at Cape Cod. First time I'd seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah. Yep. Now you grew up too.
My path was very similar to yours. I was born in Riverview. Okay. And we lived in Fishers. My grandparents' farm went from 106th Street on the south, the railroad track to the west. 69 wasn't there yet. 37 cut it in half the year I was born, but the farm went all the way across to Lantern Road and then north just about to 116th Street. That was their dairy farm. It got split in half in 57 with when new 37 came in.
Right,
Okay, because I grew up always with new 37 and old 37, which is
right.
Alphaville. And then I was 10 when 69 came through and took that much more space. And what you would call it, Cheney Creek Park or Cheney Creek Nature Center with the lake and stuff. That was all still part of my grandpa's farm. We all called it Morgan Pond, and so I take my grandkids there to fish. So 4 generations of fish there.
Wow,
Did,
wow.
did you compete with the Beavers dairy farm?
I don't know if we really competed with them. I was little at that time, so we
Oh,
moved to Knowlesville in '67, and the land we had was up on Cherry Tree and 161st Street, and it goes back to being titled by we were the second family. There was multi generations in the first family, but they bought it from William Connor as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. It's nice to have those kind of deep roots, I think. And when I work at Connor Prairie, sometimes this Saturday I'll be in the Connor house and they have a land grant map. And I take a magnifier and I'll have people, can you find where we are right now? But we also, John and I live right next to the Spanuth Cemetery. Goes
Is
by.
that the one that's kind of on the hill by Alsonville?
Yep. Yep. We have an easement of about 5 feet. I said, I look out the bedroom window and there's all the Kirkendalls in a line, who were very involved in the beginnings of Noblesville and Hamilton County. And John Kirkendall went to the Civil War. He's got, a stone there and the emblem. And I will tell people when I'm at Connor Prairie, now there's the Bradleys right there. They're my neighbors in the cemetery. And they all died between January of 1854 and July, just each one in a row, almost month by month. And
so some kind of an illness going through, or
yeah, I talked to David Highway. I don't know if he's on right now, if he attends these, but he had said that something went through, cholera or measles. He said there were a lot of deaths in 1854. And, again, you think about that. Look at all the hospitals we have now,
right?
Everywhere, and med checks. And, there was nothing for these people to do except live or die, basically.
Sue's pretty modest about her work at Connor Prairie. She started when she was 13.
Oh my goodness.
And she is 71.
Thank you, honey.
Well, we're basically the same age. I'm 68,
right.
so yeah.
Right.
But she's been there a long time.
And, like I said, I have had a life. I've done a lot of things. It was always either kind of part-time or, I could spend a little more time there when I was teaching in the summers, I could be there. But it's been a very big part of our family's life. My mom went and volunteered there and then worked there. My dad helped out. We took our dog over once. John had him riding on the tractor with him because John ran the Headless Horseman wagons and was a driver for them for Headless Horseman. Along with, we played the Curtises at Candlelight, which was a wonderful program.
Candlelight is almost akin to the Christmas program down at the Circle.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a family tradition for
Yeah.
these people to come out every December to go through for Candlelight.
Yeah.
And of course, it ran its course and they stopped it. But we played the blacksmith, we played the store. As we got older, we had to move on to a different character.
Yeah.
And so we became the storekeepers.
Yeah. We were too old to have a 3-year-old do that anymore. Yeah. Even in Candlelight, we were still too old. One thing that I wanted to talk about, did you ever hear the story about the White River mystery cat?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I grew
well,
up with that story, and then like at Horseshoe Bend and all that kind of stuff.
welp, guess who was the source of the story?
The who?
My mother and my dad. My mom was pregnant with me. She'd talk about it a fair amount of times. And it was at night, and she was in bed and heard the most incredible, chilling scream. She said it sounded like a woman in terror. And so I have, no, shoot, you're not going to be able to see it. Well, almost a picture of my dad and the neighbors out with their guns going hunting for a cat. And it said, this was July 13th of 53. A panther or whatever it is that had any sense would clear out if he saw this determined posse in the woods along the river south of Noblesville. The fellows, all neighbors who live in the area, trying to find the source of the terrifying midnight howls in their vicinity. They've even reinforced themselves with an FBI agent, T.A. Everson, who lived right in our neighborhood. And it was the McCrearys, it was the Bonds, my dad, Carl, and there was a photographer for the Star who lived in the neighborhood. So I got in the paper a lot as a kid. He published a lot of stories, but it went on. There were several articles about it. And it says Carl Schaefer, who lives at Acorn Lodge, Rural Route 5, heard the eerie scream about a week ago, just at midnight. Schaefer got a flashlight, dashed outside, and saw a vague tawny shape slink away. Maybe. Next day, Schaefer looked around in the woods near his house, and in a moist spot, he saw big tracks the size of a man's hand, with vicious claw marks gouged in the damp earth. Well, I don't know about that, but obviously the story has persisted.
And it lived on because
Yeah.
I remember hearing it in the 70s. You know, there was
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Well, that was thanks to mom and dad. And I don't remember hearing it, but yeah.
Well, it was back then. It was the it was this rumor was the myth was it was at Horseshoe Bend there at the river, a little farther north than where you are now. But so maybe the cat moved over there. So
Yeah.
20 years.
And you remember Hetty Hollow?
Oh yeah.
None of these new Fishers people probably know, and it's changed. So it really was. Remember, they're at 126th and Allisonville, 2-lane road coming down, tree covered. You've got that kind of open area where you'd see deer.
And there was no shoulder at that time. There was trees right up to the road.
Right. And of course, now it's kind of an elegant part of the road, but no. And supposedly there were lights and screams. And again, I talked to David Highway, and he said, well, that was probably pretty good bobcat territory. So that might have explained a little.
That could have been it.
In the way back.
I've got a story about Hetty Hollow that it makes me crack up every time I think about it. My grandpa was Manny Morgan, and he always drove these great big Buicks. I mean, these things were like land yachts, right? And he always drove pretty fast. Well, he and Dad were in the front seat, and I was in the back seat. And we were coming into Hetty Hollow, and there was this guy in front of us, and I wish I could think of his name. Everybody that knows who the name is gone now, but he was one of those colorful names. I mean, there was like, Pruny Wiseman and Nobles I used to run into, and there was Coondog Koontz up in Arcadia, but this guy had that type of a name, but I can't remember now what it was. But he was an old man. He never looked in his rearview mirrors. He never looked back, and he never drove over 20 miles an hour. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's going through Hetty Hollow, and my grandpa sees him and puts his bumper against the bumper of this old man's car and drove him through at about 55 or 60 miles an hour. And for years, I guess that guy would tell stories about how the ghost took over his car and he
Oh,
followed because he never looked back. He had no idea.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I'll never forget. That was so funny. But
that's
that
cool.
was the kind of stuff that happened back. You can't
Right,
get away with any of that stuff, now. But
right, right, right. Um, well, and what my mom said when in like 49, 50, when they were out here, that Allisonville, it was driving through this arch of elm trees. She
mhm.
said it was absolutely beautiful.
It was
Absolutely.
pitch dark at night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, gravel roads, narrow. And in the fall, my mom didn't drive. She would have dad. We'd go out, along the farm rows, and she'd pick bittersweet. And I think every now and then, is there any left in Hamilton
I
County?
haven't seen any in years. You used to see
Uh-uh.
a ton of it.
Yeah,
It was
and
like sassafras trees.
we got
Oh,
those.
do you? I
Yeah,
haven't
right.
seen because those used to be all the fence lines all the time, but the fence lines are all gone.
Well, see, it's the border with the cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got them there if you ever need it. And we were talking about security. We didn't have any air conditioning, windows, doors left open, and the latch, the hook on the screen door was your security,
Right.
you know. Um, Again, I like to think I grew up at that time, and the feelings, not living with the concerns, and the anxieties that kind of come with progress. Um, and then thinking about school when I finally went to kindergarten, and I don't know if we would have gone to the same one, but
Well, I went to the old Fishers High School.
okay,
You just went inside the door and to the left.
okay, we went. I was in some woman's house. I
Oh,
can't remember if her name was Compton. And we took a nap, I remember that. But after that, now when you were there, they had added that wing, right, to the old Fishers High School for grade
well,
school.
I don't know. It was just the old building, and then there was the grade school came in. That's where I
Right,
went for first grade in that
right.
new flat area.
Yeah,
But I
that's
was in the actual high school for kindergarten, and I
huh.
take a great pride in that I am actually a kindergarten dropout because and I lived directly across the street. Right across Lantern was where our house
Oh,
from the high school. And because that was all part of my grandpa's farm at one time. Behind there was still fields there. But I was the oldest son and oldest grandson on the farm. So I was already on tractors at 6 years old. I was
Yeah.
milking cows at 6 years old. And I got in there, these kids would take naps and they were doing such childish things. I'm like, I can't do this. This was, so my parents let me quit because I was like bored to tears. Let me go
Oh
back on
my
the tractor,
gosh. Whoa. Now
now first grade, I couldn't get out of, but
I've got, and again, I don't know how we can do it, but it's a picture with the old
I'll tell
Fisher.
you what, if you want to do this, take pictures of those with your phone and send them to me, and I'll put them in underneath the. Well, I mean, we'll do it later, but I'll put it in
Okay,
underneath the video.
sure, I will. It's the old and the new. So the old Fishers High School is kind of in the background, and they're adding that wing that you and I went to. It says the bell tower on Fishers High School, constructed in the early 1900s, is pictured in the top photo. Beyond the wall and girders of the new multi-purpose wing now under construction. Wow. I was kind of surprised when I found it. My mom kept everything. Um, you remember recess out on
Yeah.
the field?
Oh yeah, the big swings out there, and
Yeah.
the monkey bars and the
Oh,
slides and.
yeah. And I remember kids getting hurt,
Oh yeah. Well, we tried to swing
Yes.
over the top of the bar, and then we would jump out like paratroopers.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was great, but yeah.
Yeah. a girl in my class broke both her wrists doing that. I remember
Yeah.
they hauled her off, but yeah. And what I remember is my most vivid memory is the tree that was used for home base for kickball. And in the fall, there was these gooey things on the ground and it smelled weird. So I went with mom in high school. We went to pick, she was on a persimmon kick. And when I walked to that tree, I had this instant flashback. That was a persimmon tree and it was very prolific. Like I said, there was goo everywhere on the ground and that unforgettable smell, but just a field, you know, really just a field. And now, who did you have for first grade? Do you remember? Was it
I can't remember first grade. I wanted to say Mrs.
Fish?
Maybe Abbott or something, or I can't remember. I know I had Geist for second grade and I had Wright for fourth grade.
Okay. I think I had
I think it's because I didn't like either one of them, and so it was easy to remember them.
Well, Mrs. Geist was nice.
She and I didn't get along, but anyway.
Well, and girls had to wear dresses and slips, and we had a really couple of cold winters and got to wear pants under our dress just to get on the bus and get in the school, and then they had to come off. You know, and actually that went through high school. I think that the girls weren't wearing pants. I don't remember that. I think it was skirts and dresses.
So you're 3 years older. You may have known my aunt. My aunt was Marcia Morgan. Because that wasn't a very big class. So anyway, so Marty. And then her brother, my uncle, was Donnie Morgan. So, you know.
That name kind of, Donnie, rings a bell.
Yeah. Donnie's 4 years older than me. So, yeah.
Now, I had Miss Thomas in fourth grade. And she was your stereotype, you know, kind of heavy, wore the dresses with the sleeves right to here, you know, the black shoes, her hair pulled up in a bun. And you know what I remember is that somebody asked her, you know, how come you never married? And she got real quiet. She could be kind of gruff. And she said, I was engaged, but he died in the war, World War II. And she started crying. And, you know, that's a pretty strong memory too.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really feel, at that point, I wasn't really aware of the war.
Right.
You know, they didn't really talk about it. They didn't talk about it much. I had Swackhammer for fifth grade, and I said, you can't make up a name like that, you know.
Right.
I remember that vividly. And for whatever reason, I was interested in spinning, you know, which is what I have followed the rest of my adult life. But there was a picture in our social studies book, and I still can see the cover of that social studies book. And there was a picture of the big wool wheel. And I was trying to figure out how it worked. So I took it up to him and I said, how's this work? And he looked and he looked. And finally he said, to be perfectly honest, I have no idea. You know, and it was not too long after that we went to Prairie. It just opened as a public museum. And that's where I saw a woman in the loom house on a wheel, just like that. And I sat on the floor and just watched her. I didn't want to leave. And I think that's kind of what triggered part of my passion.
Is that what you do at Prairie still, or?
Textile specialist. Yeah. I used to cook when I was young. My God, I cook in 95-degree weather, you know. You built a huge fire, you'd feed the people, you know, in the other buildings around you. Couldn't do it now, I'll tell you. And today they're so nice because if the heat index is going to get so high, they tell them you don't have to wear a corset or you can dress in your blue shirt, you know. Nope, it wasn't like that when I was young. You went in and gritted your teeth and did it. Do you remember Mr. Bayhan?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I do. Yeah.
Well, what I remember he was, again, a nice guy. He had been in World War II. And the kids in my class were smart enough to know that if you would ask him, Mr. Bayhan, will you tell us one of your war stories? And he'd say, you really want to hear? And we all go, oh, yes, because the books were put away. And I can still see him sitting on the edge of his desk. And I think at one point he was in Australia and had something happen there that was very dramatic. He enjoyed that. And I kind of wish I could remember better, you know,
Sure.
because there aren't people around to tell those stories anymore. And I went through junior high in the old high school. I remember the wood floors. You remember the smell of the gym?
Oh yeah, the gym with the theater, and it just was. I remember seeing my dad playing donkey basketball in that gym.
Yep, I remember that too. Yeah, I wonder how did he feel about that?
I don't know. He had a blast, you know. So yeah,
Oh, did he? I was
yeah.
gonna say, did they dread it or look forward
No,
to
he was. Yeah, he was a teacher, but he was also a farmer, and so
it?
the whole
Okay.
thing just was fun to him.
Well, that was great. That was great. I don't know if that was part of the smell too, but wow.
Could be.
And it was dark in there.
Mhm.
Oh man. And when I was in 8th grade, you could not go into the balcony because it was rotted. You know, it was gonna fall or whatever. So we were forbidden. And then you couldn't go up to the bell tower because that was rotted. They condemned that part of it. And every now and then you'd hear a big crash and chunks of ceiling, plaster were falling. I mean, I don't know that that would fly today either if they would allow that be on CNN probably, you know.
My mom tells a story when she graduated from that school, 20 years before,
Mhm.
whatever. And she says she used to have an art class up in the tower because the way the glass was, it was great lighting up there, and they had their art class up there.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember in grade school, do you remember Mr. Lieber?
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but through that whole process, yeah, he wasn't my teacher, but
he did music. He,
yeah,
you'd go to him or he'd push the piano into the room, and he was a nice guy.
yeah.
And I remember we sang, I don't know if they still sing folk songs in school anymore, just the typical Oh Susanna and
Yeah.
America the Beautiful and those things. And he'd teach a little music in between. And then Miss Heron was the art teacher, and she'd come to the room too. I remember that. You remember hanging your coats in the old high school on the hooks that went
Yep.
up the stairs?
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I was at the grade school until semester break my 4th grade year.
Okay.
And that may be why you didn't know Marty. She was probably already up there, but then we went to Our Lady of Grace in Noblesville, which was a 3-room
Okay.
schoolhouse. It had first, second, and third in one room, fourth, fifth, and sixth in another, and then we had a study hall room. So it was like, and
Wow.
so I had
Primitive.
Sister Ann Rose for 4th grade, that half 4th grade and 5th grade, and half of 6th grade. And then I had Sister Roseanne that replaced her. So I was like, okay.
I remember when Kennedy was shot, we had been out at recess and we came in and things were really buzzing, and they left the intercom
Yeah.
where they could do announcements and whatnot, and they had the radio on and you could listen. And I had on a blue dress. I remember that. I remember it pretty vividly. And came home, and my mom was in the house. She was, she worked from home, a freelance artist, but I figured she didn't know. And yeah, she met me at the door crying. And were we off school? It seems like we must
I
have.
was there the day because a janitor came into our door to our room and announced it to us
Yeah.
before they
Yeah.
put the radio on and stuff, so.
Yeah, no, we were at school when it happened, and then I'm thinking like during the funeral and everything, if we were home.
Yeah, we were home because I was watching the funeral
Yeah.
on TV.
Yeah, my dad Mom was distraught. She really took it hard. And my dad goes, let's go to the neighbors. I'm tired of your mom's crying, and her bawling. So we went up to the neighbors, and then he and the Weirs, I don't know if you remember the Weirs.
Yeah.
Yep. Best friends with them. And Lois goes, well, isn't Betty here? And Dad goes, no, she's home bawling. He was, gentle soul. And I was thinking, New Year's out here in the boonies, I don't know what it was like for you, but the men in the neighborhood get their guns and they'd shoot them. It was drinking and shooting is what you did at midnight.
Yeah.
We were out in the nowhere. Oh, and I was thinking, like I said, I've been jotting these things down as things kind of popping in my head. I do remember when Sarah and I would wait on the bus up at Allisonville Road, and we would take turns laying down on Allisonville, and see how long we could stand to lay there, or till a car started showing up. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it was not very busy.
No. And I do remember too, like you do, they built 37, and there was 37A and 37, and it confused everybody. So then it became Allisonville Road.
Right.
But on one of the very old maps, Allisonville was called Allisonville Trace. And I don't know, where the Allisonville came from, but it did have that name, and then it was 37.
Well, I remember 37A and
Yeah.
new 37. So,
And when I was in high school, 69, they hadn't opened it yet. And you'd hear the boys buzzing because they'd go out and drive on it at night, the parts where they could get on,
right.
Good fun for them. Did you ever cruise around the JD?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, well, for us, it was basically the Jim Dandy.
Yeah.
And then you'd go out and you'd go across town and we'd go to the Clancy's and we'd go around Clancy's, and then we'd go south on Allisonville down to the Pizza Pit, which was down there, and we'd go around it. So that was our
your route
all night long. Yeah.
Yep. See who had cool cars and who was on a date with who. Yeah. That was fun. That was fun. I don't know if kids do that anymore. But it was, and my mom didn't drive. And actually, that wasn't that unusual.
Yeah, my mom didn't either. Not until I don't think until I was in high school.
Yeah, I taught my mom to drive when I was in college, finally had to. But you remember the ABC bus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it ran back and forth all day. You could hop on, get to Indianapolis and come back. And
well, my grandparents lived on 108th Street down on, off Allisonville.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to catch the bus there on 108th and Allisonville, and we would take it down to we go down to Ayers to go to the tea room and do stuff. And I'm still traumatized because they go down there for sale. So mom and my grandmother would take me, and I'm still having trauma. Women's at that time carried these little black box type purses with like brass fittings on them. And they would go, they had these big tables and stuff where they had all this sale stuff, and you drag you in there and you're getting beat upside the head with those things. So I still I don't want to be anywhere near a shopping center. People are crazy. So anyway.
But they all wore their gloves, they had their hats on, their dresses. Yeah.
You would go and have the chicken velvet soup at the which is amazingly good. So
Yep. That was neat. My mom worked for Blocks, and she went on board with them. She went on the art staff in 1937. And it was interesting now because I've found a lot of pictures, and she'd written down, who was who. But on the art staff at Blocks, each person had their specialties that they drew. I mean, they were not using photography. And so you drew art and had to make it clever or beautiful, something to attract the eye. And my mom did children's fashions. She did Swiss dotted curtains. Those were real big. And she would draw every little dot, every tiny little dot. I was astounded. I didn't know that she had kept 300 pieces of her art from blocks and from other places. They were up in the attic, and John was up there pulling things down. He goes, I think there's some of your mom's art here. And I open it up, and there's these really sexy legs, hosiery. Her best friend said, your mom did the hosiery ads because she drew such sexy legs. And I thought, my mom wouldn't do this. What is this? I've never seen her draw like this. But it was nice because it all went down to the Indiana Historical Society.
Oh, that's great. That's where you took it?
Yep. And it's the Betty Schaefer art collection. They said it's the only really the things they have for blocks. They have things for airs, but they had nothing for blocks. But yeah, she did that. She was the scout leader for us, our little Fishers troop and our, Brownie Fishers troop. And, I still have my uniform, my badges, all those things.
That's so cool.
And the third phase up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mansion, or
it was a nursing home. It
was it always, or was it a mansion and then get turned into something, or? Because it looks like it was a house.
It does look like it. All I remember is we were little, and we were going to go sing to the old people, and everything was gray. The people were gray, the walls gray. It was just like a world of nothing. And, they were pretty pitiful, and we're little kids, and I was scared to death. It was not a pleasant, fun thing to do. Again, we were little, but it was a nursing home, and it would be interesting. I don't know, again, if David Highway has any information on that. I don't know when it was built. It's just always been there.
But like I said, it looks like at one time it was a mansion of some sort. That's like the mansion that Jim Steckley bought and moved. It was up on the hill there at 116th, and then they moved it across the street. Now it's that event center, and then he has the big thing built on the back of it. But I remember when it was just this great big mansion, and it's really not that big a house compared to what we're seeing built around, Hamilton County now. But it was this mansion sitting up on the hill, and when they were putting the gravel pit in, he moved it over, before they put the gravel pit in, he moved it over to where it is now on the other side of the street, so.
I'll be darned. Do you remember, it was just south of 146th, which was a blinker light on Allisonville, the Molyneux house, the big, it was white, it had columns, and the Molyneux were early Hamilton County people. There's a Molyneux buried in my cemetery, and he died in the Civil War. I found a little thing in the ledger that he actually died in Kentucky of the fever, but he's buried there. So, again,
well, there's just north of 146th Street now, so I probably owe someone a new mailbox.
Oh,
because a buddy of mine, he lived right across the street. We had M80s, and we didn't think it would. We thought it would blow the door off of it because it was all bricked over. It did more than that. So,
whoa.
That's back in the day,
Yeah, that's what you did. And I'll tell you, I told John this story. It's about Sarah Weir and Tom Weir and I. And, you went out of the house, got your snowsuit on or got dressed for the weather, and you went out. And we have big ravines that run through White River, and they were more fun to go and explore, and big trees. And by golly, there's a culvert under Allisonville that you can crawl through and go over to the other side of the road. And we all stood there looking at it, and we got down, and we figured we'd fit So we went through. Now this was winter. There'd been a heavy snow, and we came out to where, right about where the lift station is now, across from the cemetery. And we were standing up real high on the hill on the snow. And all of a sudden, Tom went down through the snow, buried about up to his waist. And Sarah and I are laughing our heads off. And I don't remember, I think I went next, and then Sarah went down. And we're all kind of like, okay, how do we get out of here? You know, I said, now there'd be helicopters from CNN, you know, taking
Yeah.
bets, or how are we going to get them out? I mean, I think it took us a while. We finally dug our way out and went back through and never told our parents about
Right.
it. You know, you just didn't do that. But yeah, I don't think that happens.
Well, there's a lot of times it's lucky we didn't drown. I lived on Cicero Creek for a while when I was in my early 20s, okay, 21 or whatever it was. And my backyard was actually on Cicero Creek. It's right at the railroad trestle on Cherry Tree. And all that's gone now, but you know, the little cottage is still there. And we would get on in rafts, or like either like inner tubes, or we take
Yep.
canoes, and we'd park a truck down at 146 and White River, and leave it there. Then we come back home and we'd ride down there, and then we'd
Yeah.
come out from there. But it was a blast. You know, we'd go down Cicero Creek until I got to
Oh,
the
yeah.
river, and then we'd just wander on down.
Yep. You know, and the river, my mom always warned us about holes in the river.
Yeah.
There's some deep spots, but there were also very shallow spots that you could kind of wade out a bit. And my dad had a rowboat, and every now and then we'd row up river, you know, to the 146th Street Bridge and come back. And we lost a lot of boats. The river would flood.
Yeah.
Now we were up on a prominence, but the river would come a pretty high way up into those ravines, and Dad would bring the boat up, so there it went. But yeah, my mom and dad used to have parties down there along White River. There was a little bit of a pier that had been built, and you know, there was a natural beach. It was perfect, and there were muskrats all over the place playing. And when John and we were first married, I think, this big tree that had a huge branch over White River, he goes, shinnies out on this branch with a rope, and we had like the chairs, just lawn chairs, and tied him to the tree, shinnied back down, and then we floated in the river, you know, and that tree's gone. Things have changed, but
Yeah.
and then
It was like muskrats. I was just talking about this with someone the other day about, you know, Bob White quail. I loved, you know,
oh my God, yeah.
trying to whistle to Bob Whites and get them to answer you, and you could do that all night long, and
Yeah.
or, you know, in the evening. And I haven't seen or heard one, and I haven't seen a muskrat since the blizzard of '78.
Yeah, I remember the Bob Whites too, because they were kind of nested in the woods along the
Yeah.
periphery, and flying squirrels.
I never saw the flying squirrels, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, that was a beautiful sound, just
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. And yeah, you're right. Since about that time.
Well, do you remember when deer were rare? It was
Yes.
like a really big deal to see a deer, you know, because you know,
Yes.
and because they were extinct in Indiana until 1937, then they were reintroduced, and then by the '70s, you would see them once in a while, but not often.
Mhm.
And there were no such things as coyotes here. Okay, I never saw those, but you know, they came following the deer after the deer
Yeah.
got so prolific, you know. But it was like everybody now, deer are so thick, and you know, there's so many coyotes, but we didn't have any back then.
You know what we had a lot of? Skunks.
Yeah, I haven't seen those in a long time.
You know, you'd smell them all the time. And usually something would bother it, let loose under my bedroom window, you know, and I'd get smelling that all night. Yeah.
Well, now you smell the skunks when you're going through Broad Ripple or something like that, but it's not skunks.
Now. Now my class at Southeastern, we were the first ones to go to the new high school. So we were there in 67. Now it was a junior high and a high school, but ours was the first freshman class. And after going through school with the same 30 kids, you know, for however long, and then all of a sudden it's tripled in size and there's all these new people. And, you know, it was a different experience having so many. And the junior high kids, none of us could stand them. I'd pinch them when they go by. They were like bumper cars, you know. And we had the planetarium at Southeastern. Now, did you go to Noblesville?
I did.
Yeah.
After we moved up there in 4th grade.
Okay. Okay. How many kids were in your class in Noblesville?
Well, we just had our 50th reunion this spring, and we had 260 some that graduated. But I always thought we had 300, but we had 260 that graduated.
Wow, we had 92.
Well, you guys were just
Right.
getting started over there. Noblesville,
Yeah.
you know, was the seat, you know,
A
but
little more established.
a
Yeah.
little bit, yeah. So, you know.
Wow. And I remember, you know, on the bus, of course, as a little kid, it wasn't the different, like the buses for the elementary and all that. It was one bus, first graders through senior. And that scared me to death too when I was little, you know, there's no empty seats and, you know, I'd have to sit with somebody. But we would get stuck every now and then. We used to get stuck. There was a big dog leg on 141st and it was gravel. And so the driver would have all the boys get out and push.
Right.
I
Well, we
mean,
used to drive to school in the snow, though. We didn't snow days, really. What's that? You know, it had to be pretty severe.
yeah, it did. It did. But again, it seems like I remember a lot more snow than what we get now, but did a lot of tunneling for sure. And then there were kids. There was a group of us who were going to go, we were all going to go off to college. And I look at the book now for Southeastern, this tome
Right.
of all the classes that they offer. And they had the classes that we would need and the languages that would get us into college. I mean, it was kind of the basics that got us there. And we all kind of took the same classes together. And you know, I'm friends on Facebook with a lot of the kids from my class. And as you read their pages and as things happen, you know, there may have been kind of different levels, you know, or in different cliques and all, but time really levels the playing field.
Right.
You know, it really does.
Now, when did you graduate?
71.
71.
70,
And you said you had 95?
92.
Okay. Well, you know, one thing too, this was interesting, is the very first one of these Fisher's History Chats, when I was first trying to figure out who I was going to have as a guest, Phil Cowie came on, and Phil lives down in South Carolina now, but he is the younger brother of one of my best friends growing up, you know, and so their dad was a big Baptist pastor here in Castleton, but he moved to Fisher's in 1979 to be the first paid professional fireman, and he's the one that took them from being a volunteer department
Yep.
to a regular one. And he was telling stories, and as he was doing this, when I was 3, that year census, the 1960 census, there were 300 people in Fishers. There were 11
Yeah.
Morgans, and I don't know how many cousins I had, right? And so it was just a tiny little burg. When he came in 79, there were 1,000 people in Fishers.
Wow.
When he left in like late 80s, there were 11,000. And now there's 150,000.
Which is unimaginable.
Yeah.
You know, we went to the Fishers Methodist Church, which was right in downtown Fishers, you know, the little white church.
Right.
And if you weren't there, they wanted to know why, you know, kind of thing. Did my
Is
vacation.
it the Korean church now?
I don't know.
Right, kind of across from the grade school?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
I went to like a church camp in there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yep. I remember that Vacation Bible School.
yeah.
You know, I also still have my Hamilton Southeastern High School 4th annual commencement is here. So I'll put a picture of that
Oh, please.
on too. Yeah. Yep. And for some reason, I still have my report cards for 12th grade. Speech, I did well. I did pretty well. I found my SAT stuff, and I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. I noticed that's kind of a, wait a minute, that score's not that, whatever. But, you know, as I said, the kids in my class, they're just good people. They're just good people.
Well, Fisher's was. I try to explain this to people. If you've ever seen the movie Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox, that was the Fishers I grew up in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That little bitty off the beaten path town in the Carolinas that he had fallen into.
Yeah.
You know, like the Fisher's fish fry. You know, when they closed down 160, that was one of my favorite things.
Oh, I remember that too. I mean, everybody went.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody. And there was the laundromat. I remember the laundromat and
Fisher's Cafe.
Fisher's Cafe, the hardware store. My mom loved the hardware store.
My favorite place was the I call it the lumber yard. I love the smell of that sawdust that was piled up along the side, you know, and then I had kind of a flashback. I went to Paul Lou Acres. They took all the trees down just recently, so that's just flat now, right there on. And I walked out there just to see it. And there was a big pile of sawdust, and it brought back memories of. And Paul owned the lumber yard at one time, so Paul Manship.
Isn't it funny how smells can do that to you almost as much or more than anything else. No, and then we had our graduation in the gym. Now when our son graduated, it was down at the Coliseum.
Right.
Just I never would have bet on Fisher's. And my mom, that nickel plate, the dive bar down there. And our neighbor, one of the neighbors here was Beaver, Omer Beaver.
Yeah.
There's the name.
That's who was in the car.
You what?
I think he was the guy that was in the car.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Now that name sounds, I'm like, oh my God, I think that's him.
Yep, I bet it was. Just kind of an old fart of a guy. And he was married to Florence, who was, Mom said she always dressed very elegantly. They were about as mismatched as they could be. And he moved that farmhouse. It's in White Oaks. He moved it here and they lived in it. And the Beaver Farm, that's where we got our dogs. There was a 3-legged lab and a golden retriever that, they had. Man, they made the best puppies. And so that's where John and I would go get our dogs.
I wonder if I don't know if they were related to Marion Beaver and then Alan and Gary Beaver, the ones that own Beaver Concrete. I don't know if they're related or not. I mean, they could be, but
I wouldn't be surprised. Beaver is on one of the original land grants.
Yeah.
For Hamilton County.
That's a story I'd love to get people to know. I mean, Alan they lived across the street from us when I was a kid. He was just the most wonderful person. We got to be friends. He's probably pushing 90 now, but Alan and his dad and his brother, Marion, Richard, and Alan. Have you ever heard the name of the company? Their company is called Marial Corp. Okay, Marion, Richard, Alan, the first two initials of each one of those names. Well, Alan was just a young man, right? And they had this little gravel pit that they were trying to scratch out a living out of. And they were losing their butt. They couldn't make any money. They were just starving. They were working 24/7. And finally, the dad, Marion, and Richard, the brother, both decided this is just too much work. We're not making anything. So they just walked off and left Alan. Well, Alan was 21 years old and he was going to, by God, make this work, if it killed him.
Mhm.
And he was trying to scratch this out. And he had his wife comes down with leukemia. They had 2 little boys and she had leukemia. He said he went to the county to see if he could get like aid to help with paying her bills. Because he owned a business, he wasn't eligible. And he said it was the best thing ever happened to him because he just got mad, and just dug in. Well, he lost his wife, and now he's got 2 small children, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, whatever, and this business that he's still trying to get going. And he ended up meeting Jane. She was a waitress at the Fish's Big Boy up in Anderson, and then they got married. And she was told she'd never have kids, but she immediately had 2. And so, but they literally built that business that became this huge
I'll be darned.
company. But it all started like that, and it's just, and then he let Marion and Richard back to come back, but he's the one that made that happen, and it's just a great story. It's
Yeah.
people don't realize, but it was rolling up the sleeves and not giving up.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that happened, which for people who are new to the community, in that roundabout at 146th and the overpass,
Right.
all that, well, across the river, cross White River Bridge and take a left, and there was the Coverdale farm there.
Yeah.
And they had cattle, beautiful pasture, black cattle, all this. And it was probably 78. And it was a beautiful Sunday.
Bob and Ruthie were my parents' best friends.
Who are?
Bob and Ruthie Coverdale were my parents' best friends.
Okay.
So I grew up with Bob and Ruthie, Ronnie and Becky, and then the Welties were another group. My dad and Dick Welty and Bob Coverdale all went to Purdue together.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. So I grew up on that, hanging out that farm. So
Yep. It was neat. They had hogs there too when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And we lived right across from it. And in August, my mom would just get so furious because they clean out the hog pens.
Right.
And of course, where did it go? It went down, to White River, and we'd have to shut up the house. The stench.
It smells pretty good when that's going on.
Wow.
You feel it. You walk out the thing and it hits you in the face.
It sticks to you.
Yeah.
It sticks to you. Well, it was a Sunday morning, kind of springtime. And I look out the window, I always check on the graveyard, and there's cows in the graveyard. And I run and I look out our living room window, and there's cows in our yard. Now I look up the number for the sheriff, right? And I called and I said, this is Sue Payne. We're here at 141st and Allisonville, and we got cows, but we're not on a farm. And the dispatcher howled. She howled. She goes, all right, I'll tell you what's been going on. She said, we have been tracking these cows by the phone calls coming in. Well, it was quiet on a Sunday morning, no cell phones. So she said, here's what's happened. Those cows had to get out. They walked down River Road. They made a right-hand turn, walked across White River Bridge, made another right-hand turn, and now they're at your house. He said, we got a hold of Coverdale. He said he's in church and he'll come and get him when church is over. And then it was a little while later, it was a rodeo. I mean, a guy on horseback, and they brought in trucks and trailers right out there on Allisonville Road. Can you imagine?
Oh, sure.
At this point, wow.
Yeah.
That to me is as telling as anything.
It was a different time.
Oh, yeah. And again, I'm grateful.
I am too.
You shopped at Kenley's, right?
Yeah.
Everybody went to Kenley's, nice family. Again, quite a nice family. And Noblesville was the Diana Theater.
Yeah.
You go there and vivid memories, and shop at Weiler's, and we didn't go to Sid's back then, but had to be a little older to go there. So,
well, you were talking about the nickel plate, which was the Fisher's Tavern at that time, and I have a memory there when I was 16. my uncle Bobby, who was 8 years older than me, okay, and was quite the he was quite familiar with every bar nearby, right? Okay. And he and now I'm trying to think who he was with, but it was one of his buddies. Okay. And so they went in and they took me into the bar and I was 16. And so all I was trying to do was be really, unobtrusive,
Mhm.
totally disappeared, just sitting there at the bar being good and not saying a word, just kind of sipping on a beer and trying to get in and get out without any incident. And I recall Bobby looking at Art Johnson, is who it was. He looks at Art Johnson and he goes, let's not get into a fight tonight. Let's just keep this thing quiet, whatever, because Bobby really was into fighting. And and you didn't really want to fight him. I learned that. He was pretty good at it. So anyway, so he is that, and I'm kind of going, that's a great idea. Let's not do that, right? We were there. He hadn't said that 5 minutes, and somebody came and grabbed him by the shoulder and spun him and hit him in the mouth and knocked him off his stool. And he looked up at Art and he goes, "Well, I guess that doesn't work," And then I
Wow.
fortunately decided to go outside, and I was happily following them out the door. And they got in a fight against the old office of the elevator. And it was really kind of a two-punch fight. Bobby hit him and he fell down, and that was pretty much the end of the fight. But I was so glad to get out before the constable or somebody had to show up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was like I didn't want to be here. You guys are going to get me in trouble. So anyway,
Yeah.
so you know,
And you mentioned I remember the Fishers Volunteer Fire Department,
right,
and they made us memorize the phone number TI9. It was like 2244. That I can still pull. I mean, they were just pounding it into us. TI9.
yeah. And then we had the party lines. My grandma's phone was a party line, so I could listen
Yeah.
to the neighbors.
Oh yeah. Mom said there were 4
Mhm.
on the line back here in White Oaks, and she got orders for Art on the phone, and she was afraid she was going to offend anyone, but we got a single party line finally. But I remember that vividly.
Well, the thing is, when you consider the fact that there were only 1,000 people in Fishers in 1979,
Yeah.
11,089. There's not many people that know these things.
No.
Yeah, so know what this was all about. So, John, let me ask you a question real quick before because we're kind of running out of time here. But I understand you're really into the 1812 War of 1812 at Conner Prairie, or
Well, not so much at Conner Prairie.
okay,
There's a group of us that reenact the War of 1812.
okay,
In 2011, 12, 13, it was the 200th anniversary. So there was a lot of events for reenactment for that. And it culminated with about 1,600 of us going down to New Orleans for
Okay.
the Battle of New Orleans
right,
in 2015.
That was amazing. And John was a flag carrier. I have a picture of him out. It looks like a real battle scene. He's holding this flag and there's men laying at his feet and people are shooting. It was one of those kind of once in a lifetime thing because the English soldiers came from England.
Oh, wow.
The Scottish soldiers came from Scotland. They had cannons, they had horses, they made them practice. And I had my costume, we spent the day there. They'd take us by a bus and we'd get dropped off and, they would march and you'd talk to people. We went to teas. It was a phenomenal experience to go through.
Would you be willing to do one of this on 1812 down the road sometime?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get that all set up. But guys, we're out of time. I'm going to have to wrap this up. But thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. This was a lot of fun.
It was. Thank you. Thanks.
And I can't believe we've never met.
we must have crossed paths somewhere, you know.
1,000,002 times, probably. So,
Yeah.
all right.
All right.
See you. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
See
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.